Jeff, you used to be an intern and staff member of the Nichi Bei Times, and then you left in the summer of 2006 to teach in the JET program. Why did
Mhm.
you enter into that program, and what were your impressions of it looking back?
Oh, okay. So, let's see. I had originally gone to JET just to learn Japanese because I had studied Japanese in college, but I still couldn't speak it at that point. So, I felt that I needed a year or two in Japan to actually get the language down. It took a lot longer than that, but yeah, the JET program was a good program. It gives a lot of support to people, and so there's a good network of other jets that are there to help you, and they help you get set up in Japan.
Unlike most JET assistant language teachers, you never came back. Did you ever imagine that you would still be there?
Yeah, that's mostly my wife's fault. Um, yeah, the reason I stayed in Japan was because of her, and also taking over the temple is because her father is the head minister of the temple. So, uh,
Oh.
yeah, if it weren't for her, I don't think I would be living in Japan. My wife has a sister, an older sister, and her older sister is married. So, with my brother-in-law, we sat down and we had a talk, and one of us had to take over the temple because the temples are uh, usually kept in the family, and so it was between him or me, and so we kind of sat down and said, well, okay, who's going to take over the temple? And he said, well, I'm the older person, so it's really my responsibility, and I'm Japanese as well, so probably it'd be difficult for an American to do this job. uh, and so he said, I will do it, but I don't really want to, so if you would like to, you can do it if you like. And it just seemed to make sense to me for me to do it because he was in the middle of his career, he had kids, and all of that would have to be uprooted and he'd have to move and all that stuff. And for me, like, I was at the end of my jet contract, which was five it's up to 5 years, and so I didn't have much going on. For one, I didn't have any kids at the time, and so, and I had a history of going to the San Jose Buddhist church,
Mhm.
but what it came down to was that he didn't want to do it, and you don't really want a Buddhist minister that doesn't want to be there, right? It's
Sure.
it's not like Best Buy or something. We're not selling TVs or anything like that. So
On the topic of cultural similarities and differences, can you tell us a little bit about the experience between Buddhist temples in Japan versus the average Buddhist temple here in terms of practice?
yeah, there are actually a lot of differences between the American temples and the Japanese temples. Um, when I tell people in Japan about American temples and how like everyone comes to church on Sunday and we have a service and all that stuff, their initial reaction is like, "Oh, it's like Christianity," because everybody goes to church on Sunday. And I thought, yeah, I guess now that you say it like that, it does feel like that. I think the interesting thing about Buddhism is that it changes based on the country it's in. So in a, in the case of America, everybody comes to the temple on Sunday, uh, probably because other religions are also doing that, for one, and also because it's about the community, and I think particularly like keeping the Japanese American community together. Whereas in Japan, there's none of that at all. Uh, so in Japan, what had happened was there was what's called the Danka system, and it was enacted, I think, around the Edo period. And what it is that they were trying to stamp out Christianity, and so all of the people in the neighborhood had to register with the temple, and then the temple would vouch that that person was a Buddhist and they belong to my temple and they're not Christian, so it's okay. And so it gave the temples a lot of power over the people in the area. But from that point on, the local people and the temple were always connected. And so now today, we don't have Sunday services or anything like that. But I go to the people's house to give Buddhist chants and that kind of thing. But everybody, like almost everybody in maybe a 1 kilometer radius of my house, like belongs to my temple. So, and they have their graves at the temple and all of that stuff too.
Could you describe what your daily temple life is like?
Yeah. Okay. So usually I wake up and then I go to the temple and then I do a short service by myself. And after that, I go to the Dankasan, the parishioners' houses, and I'll give the okyo, or I'll do the chanting, and then we'll have tea and maybe talk a little bit, and then I'll go to a different house, and I'll go to maybe 3 or 4 houses each day, and that's pretty much it. That's all I do, other than like special events like memorial services or funerals. So during memorial services, I'll go to the person's house and then chant and talk. So I mean, I guess that's basically what I do. I think there's a lot of related things that I do, like I have to clean the temple and stuff like that, and also I have to practice writing calligraphy, because that's kind of an important part of our job as well, that sometimes we have to write the deceased person's name like on a wooden slat. And so writing that is pretty difficult because you're writing on wood using ink, and so it smears very easily. So and you can't just erase it because it's wood. So that requires quite a bit of practice.
And additionally, maybe you could speak a little bit about differences and similarities in holiday celebrations, like maybe Christmas, or I know Valentine's Day is really popular in Japan as well.
Yeah, so New Year's in Japan is a special holiday. It's I often tell people that New Year's in Japan is like Christmas in America. New Year's in America is like Christmas in Japan. So what I mean by that is that on the New Year's, it's a very important day, and the family all gathers around together. There's a special TV show called the Kohaku Utagasen, and it's a singing show where they have all the major celebrities and all the major singers. They all gather together on a stage, and it's 4 or 5 hours long, and that show goes on up until midnight. And people go to the temple and they ring the bell. Our temple has a very large bell outside, and so people have to ring that. You're supposed to ring it 108 times. And so people also visit shrines as well. They do Hatsumode. And so I think, the atmosphere is a lot different. So not only is New Year's Day, but the day after, and like even the day after that, most people have work off, and so everybody's like relaxing and just spending time with their family and eating osechi ryori and things like that.
How did it feel to have a Japanese face but not totally grasp the language at first? And did you ever face any difficulties or even discrimination due to being non-native?
Yeah, well, I think I was very fortunate compared to other foreigners that come to Japan, because having or looking Japanese is pretty useful. Because I think a lot of my friends that look foreign, they get stared at and sometimes followed in stores and stuff like that. I remember sometimes we'd go out to eat, and they speak Japanese better than I did, and the waiter would always look at me, and I'd be like, I don't know what he,
Sure.
ask him. I think one of the disadvantages though was like when I would, like I'd go to the bank or something, and people would just assume that I was Japanese, and so they'd start talking really fast.
Right.
And I think if I looked more foreign, then they would think, oh, maybe this guy doesn't speak Japanese. I'll speak slow and stuff like that. So I mean, that was kind of a problem. I did get stopped by the police a lot.
Really?
Maybe it's because I just
What did you do?
yeah, I just have a very fishy look, I guess.
An arrestable face?
Yeah, I think it's because I look Japanese, but I don't really act Japanese. So like when I'm waiting for somebody, like I'm usually like looking around because I don't want to get stabbed. So and I think that's very unusual. I think most Japanese people would just like be looking at their phones or staring at the ground or something. I don't know. So
Even in Japan, you remain very engaged in American life, voting from afar in US elections, attending a Black Lives Matter rally in Osaka after the killing of George Floyd, and reading 40 books last year. Why is all of this important to you?
yeah, it's very important. I think living abroad, it gives you a lot of perspective on America as a country, and you realize just how powerful America is. America is obviously the most powerful when it comes to the economy, the military, and politically as well. And you really get a sense of that when you are abroad. Like when you watch the news here in Japan, they often cover the American elections and major events that happen in America, because U.S. foreign policy affects every country in the world. And so I think it's very important for us to take our civic duties very seriously, because the vote that we have, it's something that people all over the world would they would treasure that, and we show other countries the values that we cherish. And one of those would be that we we cherish equality, and we want our neighbors to have the same rights and freedoms that we have. Yeah, I think Americans have I think there are a lot of good things about American culture, and one of them is the American dream. And I guess it's kind of a two-edged sword, in that by telling someone you could be anything you want to be, it has the negative effect of, if you are not something special, that's really your fault, because you could have been something, but you just didn't work hard enough. So I mean, I think in that sense it's kind of oppressive, but at the same time it's also very optimistic, and it's it sings to the values that we have as Americans, that you can be anything, and you shouldn't let other people stop you. You shouldn't have to like conform to other things, and that you really do have the freedom to be yourself. And I think that's a very, very important American value, and I hope my kids will embrace that someday.